Welcome in, you guys. I'm your host, Andrea, with From Mrs. to Ms. I am being joined today by Shane Kohler. Hi, Shane. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. So Shane Kohler, just so you guys know, is a conscious love and dating coach who specializes in helping women heal their emotional wounds and their relationships with men. He's here because I need some help, you guys, so they can open themselves up to deep, lasting love. He's the creator of the Inspired Love Program, a transformational journey that helps participants heal and integrate the 4 dimensions of human experience, which is body, mind, emotion, and spirit. Through this process, women uncover their inherent worthiness, connect to their inner power, and step into the dating world with confidence, attracting high-quality partners while staying true to their authentic selves. He's not about teaching tips and tricks to get the guy. Instead, Shane focuses on healing the parts of you that feel you need to perform or hide your truth to be loved. His approach is all about letting the real, passionate, dynamic, and imperfect you shine, because that's where true love is found. Shane is also the host of the thriving podcast, The Conscious Love Show. So again, welcome to the show, Shane. That's quite an introduction you have there.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. It's a wonderful introduction. I'm kind of curious. Where did you get that introduction?
No, I take a little bit here, a little bit there, and I just work it all together. Did it sound all right? It was all good?
Yeah, excellent job. Wonderful job with that. I'm like, wow, you're really gassing me up here. So
You got a lot to stand up to too, especially because, so I'm in the dating world, Shane. So all of this for me, while I'm bringing on all of my guests that have this wonderful area of expertise, I'm also learning along the way. So I'm going to, end up matching with my high quality partner as well, is what my
beautiful.
Yes.
I love it. Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning, Shane. What inspired you to pursue a career in relationships?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, so I have quite extensive background in personal development. In my mid-20s, I got hired on as like a seminar trainer, and I was traveling the country leading these big like seminar trainings. And so I've been around the personal development world for a long time, and I got trained and certified as a coach and teacher. And I guess when I thought about starting a coaching practice, I've done a little bit of business coaching and things, and I think the area of relationships really stood out to me. And back then, I mean, I honestly probably couldn't have even told you why. They just did. But I think as I've learned and grown over the years, I'd say that I think the reason why I love relationships so much is that nothing really gets in there the way our relationships do, right? It's like you can go to a business seminar and everybody's kind of hiding behind this kind of professional wall.
Right.
But that all comes down around relationships, right? And I think, especially romantic relationships, they have a way of just really getting to the heart of what's going on for us as human beings. They're the most vulnerable relationships of our entire lives. I often say the only relationships in our entire lives that will be as vulnerable as our intimate romantic relationships are our childhood relationships with our parents.
That's true.
Right? That's like the only thing that even comes close. And so I think I love the dynamics of relationships because it really gets like right to the heart of what's going on for human beings and what really matters to us and our feelings of worthiness and our image of ourselves and, all of that. So to answer your question, yeah, I think it really cuts right to the heart of the matter. It really gets into the essence of what's going on for us as people. And I find that just fascinating and, an incredible thing to work with.
Yeah. And I love that. And especially because how we've evolved over, even just the last few years. I mean, it gives you so much to work with, right? I mean, for the online dating and the way it is now and just the way people are in general, everybody has different drive, different, reasons for doing what they're doing and joining dating, whether it's for a hookup or just to meet somebody or a long-term relationship. There's so many different avenues to go down that there's so much, I think, to really discover within this topic. So I don't blame you for going that route. I love talking about dating and relationships and sex and everything. It is fascinating to me, just like I think it is to you, to see how people join together and become partners, people you would never imagine you did. And even for me, like I said, that I'm dating, to kind of use the information that I'm learning from each of these podcasts I'm doing and implement it into my own life to find, find happiness and do it hopefully the right way. There's many times I've been like, oh shit, I did that. I was totally a triple texter, or I was doing, so anxious about going out again. I couldn't wait, and I was eager, and I would lose people that way, by all of a sudden eagerly texting them. So, do you want to maybe go out later again this week? Who am I to be asking them that? It was just, things like that, just so crazy. Now, you actually focus a lot on conscious love. So tell us about what conscious love means to you, and how does it differ from traditional notions of love and relationships?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think that, if we're to look at maybe the way our parents did relationships, or the way marriage as an institution has traditionally come about, it was largely based on survival, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I didn't come from a two-parent household, so I don't really have a good frame of reference for what that looks like. But like, if I take my wife's family or my wife's parents, for example,
Mm-hmm.
like they grew up in a village in Portugal where there were, maybe like 15 people in the whole village. Like there wasn't a big selection to start with, right?
Yeah.
So like you're choosing of like these 3 or 4 people, right? So
Grab one before they're done.
yeah. And so I think, and I mean, that might not be the most common example, but I think like people have often gotten together for survival,
Yeah.
right? People have often gotten together for, certain things like security, like, raising children, like having, things that would work in terms of like having a roof over our head. And so I think that's something that historically marriages have been formed out of like necessity or survival.
Okay.
And that's something that I think is not as essential in today's world, where most people are relatively okay on their own,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we have more of a perspective on, we don't have to just go for what's going to allow us to survive, but we can go for what would really allow us to thrive. And so that brings up a whole different paradigm of, okay, well, what is a relationship in that context? Right? When it's not about just surviving. And by the way, a lot of people are still seeking relationships out of survival, right? So, a lot of what my work is like elevating that perspective even.
Okay.
But I think that, when we look at, well, what is the context of a relationship that really allows people to thrive? And there are a couple things, like it's based on a sense of mutual growth.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on a vision for the future. It's based on certain levels of awareness in terms of like a lot of the things, I talk about, or probably you talk about on your podcast, where, we talk about our wounds, we talk about our history, we talk about the experiences we had in childhood and our identity and our sense of self and these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a certain awareness about this within the relationship, that we have like an empathetic understanding as partners of each other in that respect. So there's like a higher level of awareness. There's a consciousness of mutual growth. There's a collaborative vision for what are we creating in our life together, right? Like a lot of people just kind of got together, got married, had some kids, and then we'll just figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Rather than having a vision of like, what does our future look like? What are we consciously creating together? And so I think the idea of a conscious relationship really comes down to that intention, that level of consciousness in the relationship, right? Where we have a vision that we're working towards together. We have intentions for the life that we're building. There's a certain level of awareness that we're bringing to it. There's a sense of mutual growth and evolution that we are not facilitating for each other, but supporting with each other.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
And we're supporting each other's highest good. It's not a relationship where, I'm focused on having you meet all my needs, or you're focused on having me meet all of your needs, but rather there's a fostering of each other's highest good. Right.
Yeah.
And an understanding that, if I have you reach your highest good, that's going to benefit me as well. But
Right.
I'm not self-interested in this relationship. I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm not self-interested at all, but
Yeah.
there's just as much of a focus on you having all of your dreams come true as there is me having all of my dreams come true.
Yeah. Do you feel that as many people have come to you that are looking for that type of relationship with intention and purpose to date, instead of just ones that just want to kind of, how do I meet the guy I want to meet? I mean, obviously there must be a lot. I mean, you're thriving with this, you're coaching on doing conscious love. So there must be a lot of people that truly at this point want to have an intentional, purposeful relationship. Seems like.
Yeah, well, I think what there is there are a lot of people that have found that nothing else really works.
Yeah.
Right.
Empty.
And so, I mean, I don't know if I would say most of the people I work with come to me with this clear vision of I want a conscious, intentional relationship. I mean, some of them, yes,
Yeah.
but I think what there is there's a lot of people suffering in the old model.
Yeah.
And, if we look at a lot of those couples that, they've been married for 50 years or 60 years, right? And I mean, granted, there are some of them that seem to be relatively happy, but a lot of them don't, right? Like, do you ever notice
No.
that?
And if
Like,
they could choose over, would they choose the same path? I wonder. Be interesting.
yeah.
Oh,
And so, like a lot of people just kind of in this old model kind of got together and, maybe divorce wasn't an option or wasn't something they would ever think about. And so they just kind of stuck it out and they survived together.
Mm,
But I think our world has changed a lot since then.
right.
And, as I said, now we don't necessarily need relationships for survival the way we used to. People are a lot more independent. There's also a focus on like individualism and, people, there's a much more incentive in our world now for people to have the lives they want to live. Right.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think people are finding that any model of relationship that is not a conscious model is ultimately unfulfilling.
Mm,
And so I think that's what drives people to my work or to work like this, is that there's no easy relationship, right? Like
yeah.
all relationships involve a lot of work and a lot of challenge. But
Mhm.
I think there's relationships that at the end of the day, they end up meriting the amount of effort and energy they require. And then there are relationships that don't.
Yeah.
And really, I think a conscious relationship in the way that I'm talking about it here is the only relationship that long-term really merits the amount of work and energy that we put into it.
Interesting. So when we talk about dating consciously, what does that look like? Or we're talking about starting from the very beginning, whether it's a dating site or meeting somebody, you're going in with the intent that you're not going to waste your time. Like, I know like on the dating sites, when you're going through and swiping right or left, and when you see someone that says, oh, I'm just coming out of an LTR and I'm not interested in, anything serious at the moment, just looking for fun. That should be like a flag right there. Like, hey, if I am dating intentionally, purposefully, consciously, we're going to swipe left on that one and get rid of that. That's not what I'm looking for, rather than swiping right. Right. Is that what we're
Mhm.
talking about kind of with dating consciously?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a great example of like, knowing what you're looking for and looking for that and
Yeah.
communicating about that. And, I think in that kind of example, what a lot of people do is they're like, oh, well, they say they don't really want this, but I think
Change
if
up.
if I got to know them, I could convince them otherwise, or
Yes.
maybe it would be okay to just have a fun, like, some people say to me like, well, what if I just have like my situationship on the side while I'm looking for like the right person? And
Yeah.
I'm like, like logically that kind of makes sense, but energetically that never works,
Never.
right? It's just such like messy energy that like it never translates. And
Yeah.
so I think like that's a great example that you're talking about of really like knowing what you're looking for, asking for what you're looking for,
Yeah.
communicating about it. And I think conscious dating, there's an understanding that like this is a process of personal development, right? In the same way that like if you're in a relationship, like I talked about earlier, the relationship is an environment of like mutual growth,
Yeah.
right? Well, dating is also an environment of growth. And a lot of times I think that, what has us transcend the dating phase, so to speak, is our ability to learn the lessons that are offered within that paradigm. And it's like, you've probably heard the saying that the lessons will continue to repeat themselves in life until you learn them, right?
Correct.
So you see a lot of people in the dating world that are kind of repeating the same patterns over and over and over and over and
Yeah.
over again. And so I think there are certain lessons that are being offered in that paradigm. And when we learn those lessons and develop some mastery around those lessons, we tend to meet someone that we're highly compatible with and be able to kind of transcend that paradigm and move into the next thing.
Mm.
And so I think there's a lot of learning and growth that happens when we date consciously.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of growth around like awareness of my patterns. If I have like anxious patterns or avoidant patterns, or
Right.
my resistances to vulnerability, or my fear of communication, or my fear of asking for what I want, or the shame I hold around like if I'm getting to know someone and I'm attracted to them and I imagine a future with them and I want to explore that, like the shame I carry around talking to them about that, right?
Mm.
Like, is it
Right.
like, is it okay for me to feel this way about them? Is it okay for me to want this with them? Or
Yeah.
does, right? So there's all this stuff that we carry that are really like limitations to love and intimacy and barriers to connection.
Mm-hmm.
And the dating journey, when we approach it consciously, is a journey of kind of facing up to and healing all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And as we face up to and heal all of that stuff, we become more available for like conscious love and relationship.
Mm. And so when we do this type of approach, what is this? How does it impact like the quality of people that we're meeting at this point and who we're attracting? I assume when we are dating in that certain space, we're going to hopefully attract people that are also dating in that certain space, right? And raise that quality up. Am I right on that?
Hopefully, yeah. And
Yeah, plan, right?
yeah, I I think there's something to be said for like the law of attraction type thing, right? Where, you attract the vibration of what you are. And I
Yeah.
think the more you get clear, the more powerful you become with your communication, the more confident and certain you are in your value and your ability to have what you're looking for and these kinds of things. Um, I think there is a reality to that you're going to attract more of that.
Yeah.
I also think there's a little bit of an objective reality where if you're on dating apps, there are a lot of people on dating apps. They're not all the kind of people you're looking for,
Right.
right?
Right.
If you're going to spiritual gatherings or if you're going to places that you're truly passionate about, or, traveling the world with different travel groups or things like that,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to meet certain kinds of people there. If you're going to the bar or the nightclub, you're going to meet certain kinds of people there.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think there's an objective reality too, where we've got to get good at looking for the kinds of things we're looking for and knowing where to find those things. And not to say that you couldn't meet someone great at the bar,
Right.
but amazing people usually don't spend a whole lot of time at a bar. They might go there sometimes, but they're usually not there every night, right? So
Yeah. Not what we're looking for if they are.
yeah. So I think it's both and, right? It's there's a spiritual or an energetic aspect of it, of really evolving yourself. And then
Yeah.
there's also a practical aspect of it, of being around the kinds of people, places, and things that facilitate the kind of life and connections that you want to make.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So I was going all through your Instagram and watching some of your posts, and you've got some great stuff on there, a lot of really good information for people to look at. So you stated in one of your posts, a woman's greatest obstacle to finding love isn't a lack of good men, but rather her persistent need to find one. The irony is that love arrives when we no longer feel desperate to find it. And I must say that could not be more true. And they always say that you'll find it when you're not looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit more about that, and how do we get our minds to kind of understand that and go, you know what, I need to just chill and relax. And when it happens, instead of forcing it. Every day we're looking online and we're swiping just in the hopes of finding somebody or meeting somebody. I know often, if I'm out, not so much now, but years ago when I was just crazy, like, oh, I got to find my person. It's like every time I'm out and I see someone, attractive, I'm like, oh, I could see that. And I automatically start imagining the potential there with that person. So crazy. Right. So
Hmm.
tell us a little bit more about what you were saying.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it could be a little bit of a sensitive topic, and I
Mhm,
understand that, but a lot of times when we feel this sense of desperation around meeting someone,
mhm,
what we've really got to look at is that our life in and of itself is not that fulfilling.
mhm,
And we're looking to that relationship or to the possibility of a relationship as like an escape from a day-to-day life that we're not happy with.
right. Yeah.
And that's a really, I mean, like, think about the position you're putting your potential partner in. Like,
Yeah.
it's not really that inviting, right? Is
No.
like, I'm not really happy or fulfilled in my life. Like, I don't really feel great about myself, but can
Mhm.
you come over here and make me feel better about myself and make me feel better about my life? Right. Like,
Right, right, right.
and so I think, and again, this can be a sensitive conversation, and I understand that. And I want to have a lot of compassion as I talk about it because I don't want
Yeah.
to be insensitive to it. But there's got to be like a realistic time when we look at our lives and say, like, why am I just waiting for someone or something else to come into my life and make it better? Like, why am I not engaged in making my life better right now?
Without someone on my own doing whatever I love to do, my hobbies, my things that keep me busy. So
Yeah.
it's finding that you're enough for yourself and for your life without having to have somebody, right?
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
that can come in so many ways. It can come through like building deeply connected friendships, right? It can come through, as you said, like hobbies and interests and passions and, you know, following your spiritual path,
Yeah.
following your career path. It can come
Yeah.
through, some kind of art or some kind of expression. It can come through travel. It can come through nature. Like there are so many ways that we can explore ourselves and enrich our lives without being in a relationship with someone.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that, if you have rich, fulfilling friendships and you have, hobbies and passions and things that you're invested in, and you do
Mhm.
things that you love and you have a fulfilling career. And, that doesn't mean that when you're alone in your bed at night, you're not going to feel lonely sometimes,
Sure.
or you're going to wish someone is there. And I think we all have moments of loneliness. I mean, honestly, whether you're in a relationship or not, like I think we all have moments of loneliness, right?
Right.
And there's sometimes just a need to be with ourselves in our moments of loneliness.
Mm.
But there's a difference between having a rich, fulfilling life and having these occasional moments of loneliness when you're in bed at night or when you're home by yourself. And having like this persistent, desperate need to find someone.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think like if you have that persistent, desperate need to find someone, it's something I've often called punishing yourself for being single,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And what that means is like, you go for a hike, but
Mhm.
you're out on the hike and you're not even on the hike because you're busy thinking about, well, this would be so much better if I had a partner with me, right? Or you go to a friend's house for dinner and you're sitting there at dinner and maybe there are other couples there, and like you're too busy being ashamed that you don't have somebody with you, that you can't even enjoy the dinner and the connection with the friends,
Yeah.
right? And so there's
Yeah.
this mental habit of constantly taking ourselves out of the present moment,
Yeah.
and like and basically in every moment we're focused on what's not there rather than what is there, right?
You're missing
So
out.
I can't be present in the connection with friends. I can't be soaking in the nature on this beautiful hike that I'm on, or I can't be really enjoying my life in any significant way because
Yeah.
everything I do is like tainted by this absence of a partner in it.
Yeah.
And I think that is the number one thing that people need to overcome, right?
Yeah.
Is like really being able to experience joy and fulfillment in our lives, whether there's someone there or not. And this is kind of the trickiest thing, is like a lot of people think like, well, I'm not fulfilled, but when I meet someone, I will be. And they find that it actually doesn't work that way. Right. Like if you can't find if you can't find fulfillment in your life without a partner, it's not going to be there with a partner. And it's actually going to sabotage whatever connections do come into your life.
Right. Interesting. And so a lot of it comes down to, we always talk about self-worth and self-love. And that is not only finding it before you start looking for a relationship, because you want to love yourself first before you can love anybody else, but also sustaining that throughout the relationship, where you have your own separate time and things that you do enjoy doing and love doing. And like you said, to make that partner more of a complement to your life rather than a full completion of your life, right? Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about, from your perspective, why self-love is such a critical foundation for building and sustaining a healthy relationship. What kind of things do you think people can do to create that self-love in order to get started?
Yeah, great question. I think like self-love, and that I suppose self-love could mean a lot of things, but self-love is like, if you want someone else to love you, mm-hmm. you have to recognize that you are worthy of love, right? Yeah. Like it's like to not love yourself and then want someone else to love you. That's a little incongruent. It's like,
right.
It's like, why would they? Right. Like, if you're not,
they're going to come along and be like, oh, she's amazing.
Right. Yeah. If you're not worthy of love, why would anyone love you? Right. And so the absence of self-love is kind of like a statement to the universe that I'm not worthy of love.
Yeah.
And so it's just incongruent for building relationship.
Yeah.
And so I think it's that fundamental, right? Is that on a fundamental level, I have to recognize that like I'm an amazing person. I have to mm-hmm. recognize that I have a lot of gifts. I have to recognize that somebody would be lucky to be in a relationship with me. I have to recognize that like when I spend time with someone, like that's a privilege for them.
Yeah.
And I mean, that might sound a little arrogant, but it's not arrogant. And it can equally be a privilege that you're spending time with them.
Yeah.
Right. But like recognizing like your time is valuable, your investment, your energy is valuable. And it's an orientation that you take on that shifts how you relate with everything else.
Wow. That's
so
huge.
I think that's why it's important. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's such a mindset, isn't it? It's just like, it's crazy how quickly you can change your own perspective of yourself by just little things you do throughout the day, or something somebody says to you, and immediately, or even social media. We see things on social media all the time, and I see somebody else, has this many followers, or they're out doing this sort of thing, and immediately your perception of yourself changes. So mm-hmm. mindset is a huge thing. And I love how you said that, to kind of get yourself in that mindset of, I'm pretty great. I'm pretty fucking fabulous. Like, come spend time with me, right? Which I think is so hard to be that way unless you're totally this, cocky, arrogant person who thinks they're always great. But, how, like, do you just start doing mindset workovers, train, what do you even do to get yourself in that, saying it every day?
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's an imperfect science too.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, is there an absolute like perfect self-love? I don't know. I mean, like, I think we all have insecurities. I think our insecurities get triggered sometimes. Like you mentioned social media, and it's like social media is like an incredible place to compare yourself to other people, right? It's like,
feel shitty, go to social media.
Yeah. Right. But I think we're all susceptible to that. So I don't know that there's like a perfect, immutable self-love.
Yeah.
But we could say it starts with like standards and boundaries.
Yeah.
Right.
Huge.
And it starts with like, there are certain things that I will allow and certain things that I won't allow. Mm-hmm. And being kind of uncompromising in that. Like mm-hmm. if someone isn't, just to give an example, like if someone isn't showing an equal investment in an interaction, like I'm not going to chase them.
Right.
Right. Or if
Right.
if like I'm in a relationship with someone and they don't meet like my basic relational needs, like I'm going to walk away from it.
Yeah. And why
Right.
wouldn't you want to? Why would you want to stay with somebody who you're just not on the same level and you'll probably never get there? And then you're just kind of trying to convince yourself that it's okay. Right.
Yeah. But a lot of people do that. And that's where I think our lack of self-love is really revealed.
Yeah.
Is in like, well, and so what would be the narrative there? Well, I'm with someone and, I've communicated that I want a long-term relationship and they're like kind of blowing it off and not taking it seriously, or like, oh, well, let's talk about that another time or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And so, and then I might be like, well, if I stay, if I try harder, if I show them how great I am, if I keep working for it, like maybe they'll eventually want me. Right.
Yeah.
And so that is like, you're like training yourself to not love yourself when you stay in those kinds of environments. Like you're putting other people's wants and needs and desires before your own.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
there's a subconscious message that you're sending to yourself in that, is that like, I'm not really worthy of having what I want. Or like the belief that's driving that is like, there's nobody out there who would love me, so I have to stick with this person.
Yeah.
And so those kinds of patterns are like active messages that we send to ourselves that cause us to love ourselves less.
Oh, hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard. So let's talk about healing past traumas. How do those play in creating space for a healthy and conscious relationship, dealing with all that crazy crap growing up?
Yeah. Well, so there's something I often say, and I actually got this from A Course in Miracles. Are you familiar with A Course in Miracles at all?
What's that?
It's a spiritual teaching. I've studied it for over a decade now, so it's kind of central to my life and my
Okay.
teaching. But there's a statement in A Course in Miracles that says all healing is essentially the release from fear.
Oh, okay.
And so when I look at healing, I tend to look at it through that perspective, right? And healing is basically when there was something that you used to be afraid of and you're no longer afraid of it, now you've healed.
Right.
And so to use the example we were just using, if I need to cling to a relationship because I'm afraid that nobody else is going to want me,
Yeah.
right? That's like an unhealed state. And then
Yes.
when I can end a relationship and move forward with the certainty that, if this person didn't want the same things I wanted, well, I trust there's somebody out there who is, and I can find that person, right? That's essentially a healing that's occurred, right? Because
Yeah.
something that you were afraid of, you're no longer afraid of. So
Yeah.
I used to be afraid to leave relationships. Now I can.
Yeah.
And so and it doesn't mean that you won't experience some fear, but it's to the degree that fear is driving you. And so wherever we're afraid, we're basically imprisoned in that fear, right? And so any aspect of our life where fear is making the decisions for us, that's a place where we're not free, we're not liberated, we're not
Right.
empowered, right? And so fear is the result of trauma. If when I was 5 years old or whatever, I got an impression from my mother or my father that I needed to do X, Y, Z in order to be loved. Like who I am isn't lovable, but if I'm pleasant, if I'm nice, if I'm attractive, if I say the right things, if I please everybody, then I'm lovable, right?
Yeah.
And so that ultimately becomes trauma. And trauma can range from what we would consider like very severe trauma, like, sexual or physical abuse, to what we might not consider such severe trauma, which could just be a rejection or a disappointment or a limiting impression that we picked up along the way. But all traumas, regardless of how severe they might appear to be, kind of have the same general result. And
Yeah.
the same general result is it caused us to approach life through fear.
Interesting.
And so the best way I've found to heal that is to find ways to challenge our fear and take baby steps in that direction.
Okay.
So if I learned, say, for example, that, who I am authentically is not lovable, I'm only going to be loved by performing and producing and pretending and those kinds of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that's my pattern, I perform and I produce and I pretend and I try to find love through all these mechanisms, but I never reveal who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I were coaching someone like that, I might start to say, so what are some really calculated risks and vulnerability you can take?
Okay.
So if you say, well, I could share this about myself, or I
Mm-hmm.
could ask for what I want, or I could create a boundary. Like creating a boundary can be very vulnerable because we've learned oh, well, if I create a boundary, people are going to reject me. Right.
Yes.
So I let people walk all over my boundaries so that I never get rejected. Right. So somebody might say, okay, well, I can create a boundary, or I can ask for something I want, or I can reveal something about myself that I normally don't reveal. And by practicing these calculated risks and vulnerability, we give ourselves the opportunity to face those fears. And ultimately, what we're left with, whether the situation worked out the way we wanted it to or not, ultimately what we're left with is it didn't kill me.
Yeah.
Right.
The end result.
And there's a degree of resilience we develop as we start to recognize none of this is going to kill me. And that's literally, it's, logically we understand it. It's not literally going to kill me.
Yeah.
But it feels like death.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so as we get more comfortable going to those places within ourselves that feel like death, and we can integrate those experiences, we're less afraid moving forward.
Yeah.
And so that's in a really short answer, that's how we heal trauma.
Yeah.
Is by learning to go to those places that we swore we would never go within ourselves and realizing that it didn't kill me. And then I become a little more resilient the next time around. And it's really all about resilience. The more resilient I can become, the more space I have to approach different things in my life.
Yeah. That's huge. That's huge. That's a great response. Thank you for that. Makes sense. It totally makes sense. Exactly what you said. So I mentioned in your bio, you work, a lot of your programs talk about mind, body, spirit, emotional stuff. So what are some practical steps for integrating body, mind, emotion, spirit in the context of love and relationships? How can people start doing that? Even if they're not quite ready for a relationship yet, is there ways they can start preparing based on those things?
Well, it's kind of the same answer I would just give. And so I just gave so the mind, body, emotion, spirit disconnection is essentially our relationship with fear.
Yeah.
And so we have our higher mind, which would be our spiritual connection, the source of our intuition, our internal guidance system, right? There's kind of this higher intelligence that we all have access to. And then there's our ego mind, which is rooted in fear and survival.
Right.
And so let me put it this way. Our emotions are like a communication medium between our body and our higher mind.
Okay.
So it's in our willingness to embrace everything we're feeling and have an embodied experience of life that we get access to our intuition, that we get access to higher wisdom, that we get access to our internal guidance system. And when we have fear, we don't really allow ourselves to experience the totality of our emotions. And so it's kind of like if I was a kid and I experienced some kind of trauma when I was younger, and we all experience different kinds of trauma, even outside of being, what might have happened with our parents, just the social dynamics we experience in grade school, really traumatic, do we fit in? Do we not fit in? Are we accepted? Are we cool? Are we popular? It's incredibly traumatic what we all go through. And it shapes our identity and our sense of self. And so when we're younger and, if we're going through troubles at home with our parents, or different kinds of abuse we might experience, or we're going through these kinds of social dynamics at school, and like whatever it is, all these different things we experience, it's very uncomfortable emotional.
Yeah.
And hopefully as we move forward into our become more conscious as parents and things, we'll start to be better at teaching our kids how to deal with these things.
Yeah.
But most of our parents didn't teach us how to process difficult emotion, right?
Yeah.
Like, so what we start to do as children is we start to disconnect from our bodies and we start to live inside of our minds. And this is where the ego lives. And the ego is like this survival based mechanism in our mind. And it disconnects us from our emotion. Like when I talk about emotion, I'm talking about like the embodied feeling of being alive.
Okay.
Right. It's like the energetic quality of like being alive in my body.
Mm-hmm.
And we basically disconnect from that and we live inside of our minds. And so we're trying to filter every situation through this survival construct in our minds.
Yeah.
And I often describe it like life is happening out there, right? There's, the friends at school or my parents or whatever it is, but life is happening out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have my experience of life happening in here. But when I have fear, what happens is I put like this mental barrier between what's happening in my life and my emotional experience of what's happening. And there's like this mental barrier in between in
Right.
which I'm trying to control what's happening, and from a fear-based survival place.
Yeah.
And does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I get that. The total difference between the two, what we're seeing and what we're truly feeling inside.
Yeah.
Big difference.
And so that's essentially what the ego is it's like this mental barrier that's between life and my experience of life. And it's trying to control and manipulate and skew circumstances to make sure things work out the way I want them to. And I try to adjust myself to be what others want me to be, or to get what I want from life. And so as long as we have fear, we're kind of disembodied. We're living in our minds rather than our bodies. We're disconnected from our emotion. And as I said, our emotion is like the gateway to that higher wisdom. And so the more I can really, and to go back to healing trauma, this is another part of healing trauma, is the ability to really be with what I'm feeling. Right. And so let's say I'm dating someone and I text them and they don't text me back.
Yeah.
Right. And that might trigger some kind of trauma, and that might bring up some kind of uncomfortable feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in order to avoid that feeling, what do? I go into my mind and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll text them again, or maybe I'll never text them again. Maybe I'll ghost them. Right. Or like, and so we start going into all these strategies to try to try to control the experience.
Yeah.
So when you see yourself spiraling like that, that's how you know, like, okay, I'm not in my body anymore. I'm in my mind. And what's happening there is that's the egoic, the survival mechanism that is trying to protect you from a traumatic feeling. And them not texting back isn't really about them not texting back. It's about, well, when I wasn't accepted in grade school, or when my parents abused me, or when I was abandoned as a child, or whatever, right? It's like another reflection of that original trauma.
Right.
And we've spent our whole lives trying to avoid that feeling of abandonment or rejection. And so the way to heal that is to really allow yourself to feel that feeling completely. So you would sit there and be like, okay, the person didn't text me back. And you might see yourself spiraling and, you're in your mind, but then you try to drop out of the mind and into the body. This is something I talk to my clients about a lot, right? We drop out of the mind and into the body. And we want to really feel what's happening, feel that experience totally. And I mean, if you're new to this, you may feel a lot, you may not, but as you practice with it, it can be really incredible, like how deep these feelings go. Like these feelings can be visceral, like full body experiences that, I mean, and in my program, we do a lot of work somatically. So we do certain guided somatic processes. We do breath work where we work with the body and the breath. And what all of these somatic processes are designed to do is they're designed to really like activate our emotional centers in the body and allow us to connect to parts of ourselves that we've been disconnected from. And so the more we can get comfortable feeling all of this, and really like we can take down that barrier between life and our response to it. And so life can be happening out there, and we can have a full embodied experience of it in here. And there's nothing within me that I'm avoiding or trying to resist or protect myself from. That's when I become really alive. And that's when I have access to more of an intuitive wisdom. That's when I can kind of empathetically like tune into situations and be like, okay, is this right? Is this not right? That's when I can really feel like I need to say something about this. I need to communicate a boundary. I need to ask for something. I need to walk away, right? Because all of that wisdom is in our body. It's like our higher mind doesn't communicate through our thoughts so much. It communicates through like what we feel.
Okay.
And so we've got to develop the ability to feel the fullness of our being and our body. Yeah. And that's when we access more of that intuitive wisdom.
Yeah.
So that's when I talk about the body, mind, emotion, spirit connection, that's really what I'm talking about there.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. And really what I'm hearing you say is slow down. And when you're in these moments of anxiousness, like you said, somebody doesn't text back, we got to find a way to kind of stop ourselves and just really focus on how that feels, is what you're saying, right? Get out of your head where you just want to respond or not respond and ghost them or whatever, and just actually feel what that feels like, and then respond at a later time, or recognize, oh, they could just be busy at the moment. Maybe, there's all kinds of reasons why somebody may not respond to you right away. And immediately, I know we go to, oh, they don't like me anymore, right? Like that's our first reaction. Oh, they don't want to see me again. When in reality, if you stop and just absorb it and allow yourself to actually feel it, you can sometimes calm yourself down to just go, oh, it's just wait and see. And I'm sure there's many times we do that. And, a couple hours later, they text and, oh, hey, sorry, meant to get back to you. So-and-so stopped by. And you're like, oh, when you've had all these crazy thoughts in your head already, right? And you have to kind of come to terms with it. So there's a lot of stuff moving at one part, is what you're saying. It has to all work together. Mind, body, spirit, and emotions all has to work together.
Yeah. And the answers will come, right? Yeah. Like the clarity that we need will come, but it's not about like forcing it through our egoic mind, but it's about allowing it to come naturally and being more connected to ourselves, really.
Yeah. And so for those that are, fearful, afraid of rejection or what that looks like, how can they start learning to trust themselves and trusting their intuition when it comes to love and relationships, going with their gut? How do you get there?
I mean, through just practicing this, really, right? Like, so it's like learning a new language, and so like the learning to listen to your intuition or learning to listen to your body is like learning a new language. And if you've never spoken that language before, it's going to feel very foreign. Mm-hmm. And, if somebody,
at first glance, right? You're like, oh, my stomach's telling me something about this guy, but I don't know what that is. Maybe it's just indigestion, and you blow it off, right? You just think it might be something else. So it's like actually truly trusting in it. That's the hardest part.
And it's often in conflict with what the ego says, right? Because the ego is always operating from fear, but the intuition is never operating from fear. And so like the intuition might be like, leave this relationship.
Yeah.
Because it knows that you're perfect, whole, and complete. And it knows that there are millions of opportunities of relationships like in the world. Like it knows that nothing is really lost. It knows that you're going to be okay. It knows that you can find something better. Like, so the intuition isn't bothered by any of our fears. But the
Right.
ego is like, no, if you leave this relationship, you'll be alone. And what are people going to think? And like all this stuff. And so
Absolutely.
like our body is often informing us about things that our ego would never accept. So that's like, it's learning to trust that higher wisdom.
Yep.
And I mean, I think that is like the essence of why we're so stuck, is because we continue to be driven by our fear and our trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. It all comes around the same thing. We can try to word this every different way. I have, so many different guests and specialists on it, and the common denominator is everything that you're just saying: to trust your gut, trust your intuition, your self-love, all of the same things, just really resonates with hopefully a lot of the listeners. It's resonating, like, and getting it in the head and helping this be somewhat of a practice for them. Like, okay, here we go again. Somebody is saying, this is what it takes to get, a high quality person that I'm looking for. It's a lot of work. Tell me about your thoughts on how societal and cultural shifts like dating apps, hookup culture has changed the way we're forming connections. How do you feel about all of those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has distorted things a lot,
Yeah.
Um, a lot of my work is really around simplifying things,
Wow.
but I think it takes a really strong person because I think what fundamentally hasn't changed and will never change
Mm-hmm.
is that when there's a really awesome person in the world,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to attract and be attracted to other really awesome people. And,
Yeah.
people who have done like the certain amount of healing work on themselves, people who are aware and conscious, and like, I think those people are always going to connect with each other.
Yeah.
And it might take some time. I'm not saying that, like sometimes it takes some time to find that person. It's not like,
Right.
they're just everywhere all the time. But I think that's never going to change. But I think what like social media and dating apps and things have done is it activates our trauma so much more.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so much stimulus. It's like before social media, there was still a degree to which we could compare ourselves to other people.
Yeah.
Right. But it
Yeah.
wasn't living in our like back pocket. Like, we weren't checking in with it, 300 times a day. So
Right.
like these things were already there, but they've been so heightened,
Yes.
like before dating apps, there was always some competition and like, oh, well, if I meet someone and I like them, they might meet someone else.
Mhm.
But there wasn't this thing where we would be like scrolling through hundreds of people. Like the competition wouldn't be so right in your face,
Yes. It's so
you
easy
know,
to access.
and so easy to access. And like, oh,
Yeah.
well, if I don't like this person, I can find 300 other people by
Yeah.
tomorrow. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't think the fundamentals have changed at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like awesome people are still going to attract awesome people.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Love that.
that's not going to change. That's never going to change.
Yeah.
But all of this stimulus has gotten us in our heads a lot more. Like
Yes.
it's activating our trauma. It's activating our survival responses. It's throwing us into our patterns more and more and more and more and more. And
Yeah.
so I think part of being an amazing person is having like certain boundaries with this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like having boundaries with social media, being selective about like what you look at and what you follow. Like I did this recently. I had like 500, 600 followers, or not followers. I was following like 500 or 600 people.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a couple months ago and I cut it. I follow like 36 people now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I
That's
really,
huge.
yeah, it was like, 80% or 90% of like who I followed, I just got rid of it. And I like
Yeah.
really just sat down, and like a lot of it was like, well, there are these other coaches, like I need to see what they're doing. And a lot of it was just like cutting it down to like, who do I really want to see on my feed? Like actually who makes me feel good
Yeah.
when I open up and I see their content, like who makes me feel good about myself,
Right.
who like, and, and like cutting out all that extra noise.
Yeah.
And I think on dating apps, it's the same thing. It's like when I when I coach people on dating apps, which I personally, I think there are a lot of great ways to meet people not on dating apps. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of like, I don't want to say that high value people are not on dating apps. That's not true. That like
Yeah.
everybody's on dating apps,
Mm-hmm.
but I think high value people spend a lot less time on dating apps.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so when I coach people, like one of the first things I often do is like cut your dating app time down to 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And all that extra time that you would have been on the dating app, like invest that time into your life.
Okay. Interesting. That's a great idea.
And I think
Yeah.
another part of this too is like it's kind of like ruining our brains.
Mm-hmm.
Like the constant hits of dopamine that we get on social media
So
or that
true.
we get on dating apps,
Mm-hmm.
it actually it's it's lessening our ability to experience pleasure in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So like we go on a date with someone and like, the way nature is designed is that when you're on a date with someone, you're supposed to be like having your dopamine activated and it's supposed to make you feel good and it's supposed to make you attracted to that person and you're supposed to want to see them again. Well,
Yeah.
if we've depleted our dopamine stores by scrolling on social media or by being on dating apps, it's like our brains are not really in a place where we can even really be that attracted to someone.
Yes. Yeah. That's a huge one right there, Shane, because I'm just imagining in my mind exactly what you're saying. Because when I think about being on dating apps years ago, when I first started, it was those dopamine hits. It's feeding your ego, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have like 500 likes today. You're like, oh my god. And now, fast forward to I've just started dating again and going on there. It has such a different effect because I think it has diminished my excitement for it. Number one, and I'm finding I'm not even if they want to go on a date, something is lost in translation there, and I think that's a great point that some of the dopamine is gone from it because it's just dwindled over the years because I've gotten my hypes from it. I think that's such a great point. Scary. It's
Yeah.
really scary. Scary. So what advice would you give to someone who feels stuck in a cycle of attracting unhealthy and unfulfilling relationships? Do you have some last minute advice for the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I think like for anyone who's struggling in this area, like
Mm-hmm.
take a break and focus on yourself.
Yep. Huge.
And there's like the scarcity mindset, especially if people are like, well, I want to meet someone by a certain time, or especially with women who are like, I want to have kids and, my biological clock is running out. And like, and I'm very sympathetic to, like, my wife is 43 and we're trying to have a baby right now. So like,
Yeah.
I'm very sympathetic to these kinds of things,
Yeah.
but I think we get caught up in these thought patterns
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't like get us closer to where we want to be.
Yeah.
Right. It actually like slows down the process. And so I think like if what you're doing in your love life right now is exhausting to you in any way,
Mm-hmm.
if it's hurting you in any way, right? If
Mm-hmm.
it's like stealing your peace or your joy in any way, like you've got to recognize that you're not really getting closer to what you want.
Right.
Like you might be doing more work, but that doesn't mean that work is actually translating into results.
Right. Mm.
And so I don't think anything is ever lost by taking a break and reinvesting in our own joy and our own vitality.
Mm. I love that.
And that's going to translate, like going back to the dopamine thing. It's like when you get off dating apps, you might feel like, oh, I'm not meeting people anymore. I'm not getting asked out as often or whatever. But if you're reinvesting that energy into things that are actually increasing your real vitality,
Mm-hmm.
like that's going to translate to your love life.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're, you might get off of dating apps and start going out to community functions or going out to things that, where you could meet people in other ways. And you might not get 5 dates in a day the way you would on a dating app, but
Mm-hmm.
you're building real world connections and you're
Yes.
building community and you're you're re-energizing like your excitement about life and your ability to connect with other people, and like you're working on your social skills and things like this. So it's like that's gonna pay off way more than being on apps for hours a day and going on one dead end date after another, that just feels like draining. And it's like, oh my God, I have another date tonight. Like, I don't even want to go, but if I don't go, I'm not going to meet anybody. It's like that energy, like you're not going to make a high quality connection from that energy.
Right. Because you're not even that headspace to meet that. You're so checked out.
Yeah.
Right.
And so like, if you're in any kind of cycle that's like not supporting you, take a break and like reinvest in your own vitality. You know, start orienting your life around what you love, around what brings you joy. And I've always said, like, whatever you love to do, there are a bunch of people out in the world doing it. You know, if you like to rock climb, or if you like to hike, or if you like to read, or if you like to write, or if you like to travel, or like whatever you love to do, there are people out in the world doing it, and you can find ways to go do it with them.
Yeah.
And that's going to lead to friendships and like, and friendship, like a lot of people are like, well, I don't want friends. I want, you know, a partner. Well, friendships are a great gateway to a partner. Like when you make friends, you open yourself up to an entire network of people that person knows. Yeah. Right. If you make a friend and they invite you to a party, you're at a party that you never would have gone to if you hadn't had that friend. And there are people there that you never would have met. And if you continue being social and you continue practicing this, your network is going to grow exponentially. And yes, that doesn't give you the instant gratification that being on a dating app gives you. Yeah. But often things that give us instant gratification aren't really worth much in the long run. Great. But building a network and a social circle and making friends and getting invitations to go out places and do things and to parties, and like that is a much more like life affirming way to invest your time and energy, and that will pay off a lot more, even though there's not as much instant gratification.
Oh, I love it. Well, there you go, you guys. That's the best information, is to just focus on yourself for a while and take a break. I really love that. And I think that's such a great idea. So tell us, Shane, where everybody can find you. Where can they find your social media stuff, your website, books, anything you want to tell them?
Yeah. Best place to connect is probably Instagram or my podcast. So Instagram is The Living Relationship. It's _living_relationship. So, you know, it's probably one of the best places to connect. My podcast, The Conscious Love Show, I release new episodes every Wednesday. So you can subscribe there and connect with me on the podcast. And other than that, you can go to my website. My website's thelivingrelationship.com. I think those are probably, you know, quick places to connect. Those are probably the best places. So, yeah.
Perfect. And I'll put those all in the show notes for everybody to have. So before you go, I like to do a little From Mrs. to Ms. Would You Rather game, if you have a few minutes to play along with me.
Let's do it.
Okay, 10 questions. Number 1, would you rather encourage someone to focus on healing their past relationship wounds before seeking a partner, or to find a partner and grow together through the relationship?
Can I say both?
Yeah.
So I think I would probably lean towards the first one, not because you can't grow together in a relationship, but just because the first one, you have more power in that.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Good answer. Okay. Number 2, would you rather go on a first date where you talk about your dreams and goals, or one where you share your funniest and most embarrassing moments?
Dreams and goals.
Dreams and goals. So you should kind of come out of the gate to see if you align, right? Kind of
That's
smart.
me personally. I think either one could be good. Me personally, I think I would enjoy that more.
Okay, good answer. Number 3, would you rather fall for someone who makes you laugh uncontrollably, or someone who gives you butterflies every time they walk in the room?
Makes me laugh.
Makes you laugh. That's a big one. I love that. Number 4, blindfolded surprises or playful role play?
Playful role play.
Ooh, I like that. Number 5, would you rather see someone go through a difficult breakup that leads to self-discovery or stay in a safe but unfulfilling relationship for stability?
That's obvious. First.
I know. No, wait. Number 6, would you rather have the ability to read your partner's mind during sex or be able to control their sensations with just a touch?
That's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard to choose. I mean, I guess my thought is that both of them sound exciting, and
Until they're not.
and I think both of them kind of deprive you of the role of like being intimate with each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like being in the moment, because then you're either thinking
Well, like
about it. Or,
if
what do
I'm
you mean?
reading their mind or I'm controlling their sensations,
Yes.
that deprives me of like having to be intimately connected to them, right?
See.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Well played. All right. Number 7, trying new positions or mastering the classics?
trying new positions.
Trying new positions. Number 8, would you rather fall in love with someone who sings their feelings instead of talking or someone who communicates exclusively through interpretive dance? Such a
I
choice.
like interpretive dance. That sounds fun.
I'd like to see it.
You
Oh, okay. Number 9. Would you rather help a client plan the most romantic, unforgettable date night or coach them through crafting the perfect flirty text?
Probably the flirty text.
Flirty text. It's kind of fun. We help someone do that and see the response you get. I remember doing that with friends, and you're like, "Oh, what did they say?" You know, it's so exciting.
Yeah.
Number 10, you and your wife slow dancing in the living room or spontaneous dance moves in the kitchen?
Spontaneous dance moves in the kitchen.
Oh, I love that. That's so much fun when you do that kind of thing. Either way, really, slow dancing or fast dancing, right? It's kind of sexy and fun. Well, thank you for playing along with that. I'd love to always hear people's thoughts and ideas on that. We got a little bit more information there out of you too, so that's always exciting. So thank you, Shane, for joining me today. I loved having you. So much great information, and I love the idea of consciously pursuing your life. I'm trying to do that personally with purpose and intent. And, you know, I love that everybody wants to listen in and find a way to find that person intentionally as well. So it's such a great topic.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and awesome job with your show, and grateful to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you so much. And to the listeners out there, I will have all the information in the show notes for where you can find Shane Kohler in the Living Relationship. You can find From Mrs. to Ms. on any major streaming platform. You can email me at info@FromMrs.Ms.net. And we'll see you guys again next week. Have a great one. Bye.
Bye.